Meanwhile, the Supreme Court blocking enforcement of the Biden-Harris administration's changes to Title IX, which would have broadened definitions to include gender identity. The High Court siding with a growing number of states that called for a stop to what they say is an unlawful rule against girls. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill helped lead that fight that sparked the Supreme Court decision, which came down just yesterday. She joins us now. Mrs. Attorney General, thank you for being with us. Let's first, if we might together, put this in context so that the audience understands what happened at the Supreme Court. This was an injunction that a lower court ordered that stopped the Biden administration's rewrite of Title IX, which would have expanded sex to include gender identity. Is that correct in what was decided by the Supreme Court?
That's correct. It's a preliminary motion. It was the government did not like the fact that we obtained the injunction, so they went to the United States Supreme Court to see if they could block it. All
right, so an injunction stops the rewrite for now of Title IX. Let's talk about what the Biden administration is trying to do to Title IX, though. They are expanding definitions of, for example, sex. They want to include gender identity. Is that right?
Right, and this is not the first time they've tried. This is, in fact, the third time they've tried. They've on two other occasions attempted to do the same thing, but they never had actually rewritten the Title IX rules. This is probably the largest effort to date to make this particular cultural and policy change.
All right, so a lower court stops it with an injunction. The Supreme Court upholds the injunction, meaning that will not go into effect. This rewrite of Title IX won't go into effect for now, but there will be a big case about this. What do we say, Mr. Attorney General, to the argument made by the government that the cultural debate we're having about men joining women's sports wouldn't be affected by this change to Title IX? They are arguing this doesn't allow boys to jump into girls' sports.
So I think that argument's just ridiculous. It would be impossible for them to deny the entire construct that they've recreated for Title IX and somehow say that wouldn't also apply to locker rooms and girls' sports. It absolutely does. In fact, the current draft of the rule does apply to bathrooms, to locker rooms, to classrooms, to everywhere. And so it's a broad application right now of the rule and rewrite of the rule. They didn't use the word athletics in it, but they couldn't really deny that it applies across the board. And they certainly couldn't come and carve athletics out without contradicting everything they just did.
And really quickly before we go, would you just, and I'm sorry to have to ask you to do this quickly, but I think we take for granted sometimes, for the full scope of Title IX, we know it affects college athletics. Title IX governs how much of, what we deal with in civil society.
Well, Title IX covers the entire educational environment from K through 12 and all of higher ed and graduate schools too. So it's very pervasive, and it's been one of the most successful laws that have advanced women in educational opportunities and athletic opportunities that's ever been written. Right. So it's been enormously successful, and this rewrite eviscerates Title IX for women.
Yeah. I mean, rewriting it now to include gender identity. For now, it's stopped, but we'll be following along as the courts hear the actual merits of the case going forward. Attorney General Murrill, thank you so much for being with us on Fox & Friends.
Thank you for having me.
Right. I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.